What in particular were the qualities he possessed which attracted him to you?
I thought it was a couple of things. First of all, he had been the editor of a major national newspaper, so he had an enormous amount of professional experience. And what we needed was someone who was going to be able to handle the communications of a large organisation, the Conservative Party, and develop a media strategy, but also be able to handle on an hour-by-hour basis the problems that were thrown at us. Sometimes evidence from this inquiry has suddenly been picked up, and within 20 minutes the government has to have an answer, or at least a holding answer. Shows, I think, everyone involved in this inquiry how quickly things can move, how quickly the government has to be able to react, and indeed an opposition has to be able to react. And I thought that Andy Coulson had that experience as someone who had run a large newsroom, was used to the pressure of dealing with fast-changing stories. I thought, secondly, it wasn't just that he was experienced. I had met him a few times, although never one-on-one, and he had struck me as someone who had conservative views, had shared my conservative values, and I thought would bring that as well to the party. So I thought there were a number of reasons why he was potentially a very good person to do the job. I asked him in a general sense, as you might do in a social encounter, whether there was more in the phone hacking story that was going to come out that was not already public that we needed to know about. And he said no. And of course, the phone hacking story had been the Mulcair-Goodman court case and subsequent convictions.
Why do you think you asked that question?
Well, because obviously it was an issue that he had resigned because of what had happened at the News of the World. And certainly I was aware, and we discussed it beforehand internally, that before approaching him, that hiring him would attract some controversy because of the circumstances of his resignation. On the other hand, if he hadn't resigned, he wouldn't have been available for the job, I suspect. And as I say, I asked it in the way that I have put down here, to the best of my recollection. I think it's also worth noting that the Press Complaints Commission subsequently, before we formally appointed him, said there was no evidence of anyone else at the News of the World involved. The former Prime Minister, in his evidence to this inquiry, has said that he believed Mr. Coulson when he was the first politician, as I understand it, to phone Mr. Coulson after his resignation. I guess I also had assumed that because there had been a criminal court case and in a court, and all these things had been investigated by the police, that there was nothing else. But I asked it.
So you asked him to exclude the possibility that there might be something else. Is that it?
I asked him because I wanted to find out from him whether there was some as yet undisclosed part of his involvement in the Goodman-Mulcair case that we were not aware of, and he said no.